Welcome to this week's edition of the Purpose, Value, and Meaning web class. This week, we are talking about developing your communication skills so that you can achieve and get anything that you want. So many times in life, we are presented with opportunities, but we're not able to effectively communicate our wants, needs, and boundaries, and those opportunities end up not being fulfilling. I'm Keisha Golder, and I help individuals improve their circumstances by reclaiming their life and living on their own terms. I also created a 3-stage 9-step program called the Your Life Purpose Makeover Journey, which is designed to help you find your purpose, live authentically, and as a bonus, you gain confidence. I would like to remind everyone that there will be a question and answer section towards the end of the presentation. So if you can hold all questions until then, I would greatly appreciate it. Let's do a quick recap of last week before we jump into this week. Last week, we discussed core values and how our core values help us acquire success and all of the things that we desire when we truly know and are clear and are able to understand our values and where they come from. This week, we are talking about communication. Communication is an essential part of life, but most of us either do not know how to communicate effectively or are afraid to communicate our desires. We have to be mindful of not only our communication style, but the style of those who we are communicating with, or there will be a barrier. Before we start talking about the communication styles, let's talk a little bit about communication. As you can see, communication is the act of transferring information from one person, place, or group to another. The transmission of the message from sender to recipient can be affected by a range of things. These things include emotions, cultural situations, the medium you use to communicate, and your location. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the experiment that sometimes happens in schools where a teacher picks one person to start the message and then another person to receive the message, and of course the message has to go through all of the people in between, and by the time the message gets to the recipient, the message is completely different from what the sender transmitted. And you can see during this process that everyone's information, they add a little bit of themselves into it, a little bit of their understanding, not intentionally, but because we all communicate differently. So the sender starts the message, no one knows what it is, and then it's passed along until it gets to the recipient. The recipient gets the message and they say out loud what the message is that they received. Then it is either confirmed or denied by the sender. That was the message. And if it's denied, of course, the sender tells you what the message really was. Most of the time in school, it's used to help prevent gossiping or talking about someone. But it's effective because it shows everyone, not just children, how we have to be very clear in the things that we say and make sure that we are communicating in a way that other people can understand us. There are several communication categories. Most of us should be familiar with it, but if not, don't worry, because I'm going over them. There's spoken or verbal, which includes face-to-face communication, telephone communication, radio communication through television, as well as other medias. There's nonverbal communication, which includes body language, gestures, how we act and dress, where we stand, and even our sense. And some of the nonverbal communications are not intentional, but they're there, even if we are not aware of them. Our unconscious mind will display them. I'm a person who has facial expressions. I do not intentionally make a bunch of facial expressions, but if I am feeling something or I am thinking something, you can guarantee that my face is going to show it. The third communication category is written communication, which includes things like emails, letters, social media, books, magazines, the internet, all of that. And of course, the last one is visualization, which includes maps, logos, videos, anything that is visual, charts, graphs, all of those things. Now, let's get into the communication styles. So we know what communication is. We know the different categories of communication, but let's talk about the styles, because the style of communicating as well as the category of communication is what keeps us from effectively communicating. So there are four main communication styles. There is passive, which is a person who is a passive communicator. They have trouble expressing themselves and they tend to give in to others. You're able to recognize a passive communicator by their inability to say no, their poor posture, their go with the flow attitude, and their difficulty making eye contact. I, at one point in my life, was a passive communicator because I didn't want to cause conflict. I did not want to be a part of conflict. I just wanted to go along with the flow because I felt it kept the peace, although it made me miserable. The second type of communication style is aggressive communicators love to dominate the conversation. They do not listen to others, and it's hard to get a word in edgewise with them. The behaviors that are associated with aggressive communicators are poor listening, controlling or demanding. They point their fingers at people, they frown, they stare intently, they threaten, and they intimidate anyone who criticizes them. I've never been an aggressive communicator, so but I have been on the receiving end of aggressive communication. The third communication style is passive aggressive. Individuals seem to be passive on the surface, but everything they say has an underlying tone filled with resentment or sarcasm, or it's a type of communicating where I hear what you're saying. I'm going to do something else though. Did you see all of that? And I'm saying that I'm going to go along with what you're doing, but everything about my nonverbal communication and all of those things show you that I'm going to do something else. That's passive aggressive. You can see the behaviors that are associated with passive aggressives as sarcasm. Your words don't align with your actions. Your facial expressions do not match your words, and you have difficulty acknowledging your emotions. I also used to be a passive aggressive communicator, and sometimes I catch myself falling back into passive aggressive communication. Now, the fourth communication style is the assertive communicator. Assertive communicators express themselves in healthy ways. This is the communication style that encourages open, honest dialogue. And you consider the needs of other people during this dialogue. The behaviors that are associated with assertive communication are expressing your desires and needs with confidence. You encourage balanced conversations where both parties can speak. You use I statements instead of placing blame, and you have the ability to say no, and you maintain good eye contact. Now, when I say the use of I statements instead of placing blame, so if you are an assertive communicator, you say, I feel XYZ instead of saying, you made me feel. Just that change in words can either start an argument, or stop it before it can even begin. So for me now, as an assertive communicator, I am very mindful of the things that I say and how I say them. I'm also very mindful not to push my feelings onto someone else and allow them to be able to express to me what they are feeling. And then we work together to try to figure out what the situation is and how we can handle it. Now, the most effective communication style is the assertive, because as we talked about how to get what it is that you want without using others to get it. You are thoughtful, you're kind, and you are not just waiting for a moment to reply to someone, you're actually actively listening. Assertive communication people have high self-esteem and they want the best solution. So if you are an assertive communicator, you're very sure of yourself, but you don't want a solution that's just going to benefit you. You want the solution that is going to help everyone in the situation. You're not intimidated by others, and you feel free to express your ideas. So during assertive communication is effective because even if someone comes in with that aggressive attitude, that aggressive tone, you allow them the opportunity to express themselves. But you are not going to allow them to push you down so that you don't have the opportunity to express yourself. You assert yourself. Okay, you've had your turn to talk. We've heard what you needed to say. Now it's time for me to say what I need to say, for me to express my feelings. That is how an assertive communicator, they're setting their boundaries. They're not letting someone push them around. And that's how they are able to communicate effectively, because they don't bring emotion into it. The other three styles of communication bring a lot of emotion into when they communicate. So here's the thing, anyone can learn how to communicate effectively. Even if you are a passive aggressive or just a passive, you can learn to communicate effectively. And you do that by being clear, having a clear understanding, having the clarity of what it is that you want to communicate, what outcome it is that you want to come out of this communication, being straightforward. Don't beat around the bush. Speak on what the issue is at hand, what you feel about the issue, how you think the issue should be resolved, and allow others to do that. Always have solutions. Be solutions based. Everyone's going to have their moment to say what it is that they want and the solutions that they feel. The whole purpose of communicating is to come up with a solution. And I'm not saying that we only communicate during difficult times. That's not true. We need to always communicate clearly, decisively, so that we are always moving forward. We're always spinning the wheel forward. Now, why is it important to know your communication style? It's important to know your communication style because you want to be heard and listened to, and you want to be able to deliver your message effectively. So if you are an aggressive communicator and you want to communicate with, and you notice that they are not receiving your message, but you're not sure why, it's your communication style. So we need to always be aware of our communication style because we all want to be heard and listened, correct? We all want to be able to express our messages effectively. And when we are aware of how we communicate, we know the best way that someone can get through to us. We know the best way that will work for us. But in addition to us knowing why we communicate the way that we do, or vice versa, we need to be aware of the other people. Because, like I said, if you come at me aggressively, I'm going to allow you to have your moment. And then I'm going to come at you assertively. No emotion, but I'm going to come at you and let you know, hey, I know that you discussed your feelings. It is time for me to discuss mine. Please do not dismiss my feelings. Please do not dismiss my thoughts. We're in this together to create a solution. So we need to be able to understand each other. And here's the thing with communication styles. Your style may change depending on the situation that you are in. Again, your style may change depending on the situation that you are in. If you're in a situation where you do not feel comfortable, you may become that passive individual. If you feel that you're in a situation where you're being threatened or that you have to be right, you may become that aggressive individual. If you're in a situation where everything is even killed and everybody is just going and doing the things that they need to do, you may be that assertive individual. But it very much depends on the situation that you are in and how you feel that you need to communicate. But in addition to knowing your communication style, it's important to know the style of others, because that's how you gain the ability to effectively communicate. When you know how someone else communicates, it allows you to communicate with them effectively. Think about it in this way. Most of us have heard of the five love languages, and probably taken a quiz and know what our love language is. And when I say relationships, I'm not talking about intimate relationships. I'm just talking about relationships in general. So if you have a relationship with a person and you've disclosed what your love language is to them, they have disclosed what their love language is to you, and every time they do something, it's with their love language in mind and not yours. It doesn't feel the same to you, or you don't appreciate it the way they think that you're going to appreciate it, because they're using their love language to do something for you. So if they are constantly buying you gifts, and that receiving gifts is their love language, but quality time is yours, you'll take the gifts. You may take the gifts, you may not. But them giving you gifts and you receiving gifts is not going to do the same thing for you as that quality time. And you spending quality time with them is not going to do the same as receiving a gift would be for them. This is the same thing. You are communicating with an aggressive individual. You being passive is not going to allow you to get your point across. They are going to demolish you. You will never even be able to know. You probably won't even know what's coming because you're afraid to speak up. You're passive. You are afraid to speak up, and they are aggressive. They're going to completely take over the conversation. You're communicating with someone who's passive aggressive, and you're assertive. Yes, you allow them the space to communicate. But again, you have to know that this person is a passive aggressive communicator. So I need to not only pay attention to what they are saying, I need to pay attention to what they're doing, consciously or unconsciously. I need to be looking at everything. All of the communicating categories I need to be paying attention to. And when I communicate with them, I need to be mindful of what I'm saying and how I'm saying it so that they receive it. That doesn't mean if you are communicating with an aggressive aggressive communicator that you go raw and are all loud and you're going to do what I said. No. Again, we remove emotion out of it. You are going to communicate with them, but you are going to do it in a way where you stand your ground without making them feel wrong for how they communicate. People receive things a lot better when you take the time to become aware of how they receive things. And you get what you want and they get what they want. And that, at the end of the day, is what it's about. How to get the communications, how to use your communication style to get what you desire. You have to get clear on what you want. And actually, these steps work for more than just communicating, but you have to get clear on what you want. You have to communicate from a place of calm. Like I said, remove all emotions, avoid being accusatory. Include steps that will allow someone to support you in what you're saying and provide the opportunity for reciprocity. Using the assertive style of communication allows for you to express yourself and through all of these methods, because you know what you want, what outcome you desire, you know how to not make the person feel like they are being accused. Because you're a solution based, you have the steps that support you, and you provide the opportunity for reciprocity by allowing them to express themselves. Like I said, even when you're dealing with the other communication styles, the passive aggressive, the aggressive, and the passive, you don't lose your sense of who you are and how you communicate, because a lot of the times when you remain who you are, you remain calm and you don't get accusatory and things like that, you're modeling the behavior for the situation. And eventually that other person will calm down and follow suit. As I used to work customer service and at a supermarket, and a lot of times people would come in and get all hype and start yelling. And yes, there were times when I've lost my cool, but I noticed the more that I remained even killed and was calm and allowed them to say what they needed to say, as long as they provided me the opportunity to express what needed to be expressed from my side. By the time they got everything out that they needed to get out, because I was not interjecting, I was not yelling, I was not hype, I can't wait for you to stop so that I can say what I need to say. I was none of that. They had calmed down, and we were able to have an effective communication about whatever the issue was. Sometimes, and I know sometimes as people, we want to give people back what they're giving to us, but that's not always the answer. We really need to focus on being who we are. And if being the assertive communication type gets us through these hard situations, gets us what it is that we want, because we are very clear on it. We've envisioned it, remember? We see where we want to be. We know how we want to get there. So we are clear on it, and we can verbally communicate that, verbally and non-verbally communicate that to someone else. We're going to get there. Something I want you guys to remember. Communication is key, but so is a sense of understanding. People always tell you, great communication is the key in a relationship. Not really. You can communicate all day, but does that other person understand you? Are you communicating in a way that they are going to understand you? So communication is a key, but the other part of that is a sense of understanding as well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions right now. You can unmute yourself, type it in the chat box, whichever you feel free doing. Now, if you want to keep in touch with me, here is where you can find me. You can go like my Facebook page, which is Coach Keisha Golder. You can subscribe to my YouTube, Keisha Golder. Follow me on LinkedIn at Keisha Golder. And of course, connect with me on my website, KeishaGolder.com. There you get blog posts, weekly blog posts. You get weekly blog posts. You get replays of the weekly web classes. You can sign up for my emails, which provide not only information about the web classes, but you'll be first to know what's going on with me, where I'm going to be at, what I'm going to be doing. I also provide free items on my website that can help you work through some of these 9 steps on your own. And if you can't do it on your own, of course, you could always reach out to me through my website, KeishaGolder.com/let's talk, to see how I am able to help facilitate your growth and your development so that you are able to live within your purpose. The 3-stage 9-step program. It's important for you to have a clear path of where you're going and the things that you are going to encounter to get to that goal, no matter what it is. This is just my roadmap of how I help individuals find their purpose. Everyone does not always need to hit each spot. But those of you that do, we make sure that we hit each spot and we make sure that we develop so that there's no doubt in who we are, what we value, what we believe, what our skills are, how much our interest has governed what we do in life. Same for our experiences. We create that vision and we are solid in our purpose so that we have the blueprint, that paradigm that allows us to not only live within this purpose, but shift when we feel we are being called to another purpose. I thank you all for joining me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.